Hello everyone, welcome to our channel Public Cloud Design Tips and Tricks. In this channel, we generally discuss about public cloud design problem statement and their related solution. Today, we are going to discuss about Azure Container Apps. So today's problem statement, how to realize containerized app and microservices in a serverless platform, or how to implement Kubernetes architecture in public cloud without having the Kubernetes infrastructure knowledge. That's where we are going to discuss about the solution which has been provided by Microsoft Azure is Azure Container Apps. AWS has provided AWS Fargate. Google Cloud has provided Google Cloud Run. But before we jump into Azure Container Apps, let's try to understand what is a fundamental behind the microservice architecture. So before that, what is a monolithic application? A monolithic application is an application where, or an architecture where you have your all your different services. They are completely tightly bound into a single artifact, and you are trying to deploy that artifact to a server to realize these services. So if your one service is getting down, then other service will also be impacted, because you have to fix that service. To do that, you have to do multiple deployments. Then every service will be impacted with a downtime or lot of other aspects, and it is completely tightly coupled. So if you have multiple teams, those who are working to implement these services, so each time they have to do a deployment, then they have to also get the analysis with other services. That's where it is tightly coupled. To make it much more easy, microservice pattern is telling, okay, you can split these services into individual deployable unit, and you can make it much more faster, highly scalable, fault tolerance, and the time to market will be increased, because you can independently work with the services with their impacts. That is what a simple fundamental behind a microservice and monolithic architecture. Now, what is a container? Container is nothing but it is a packaging system, or it can isolate your application with their entire runtime environment, all of the files necessary to run. That means when you are containerizing your solution or your application, that means it will also containerize everything into it. Your runtime, your environment, whatever needs to be there to run your application, it should be there in your container. So that's where the basic fundamental behind the container. Now, when a container is coming to picture, then the container lifecycle management and the orchestration is the biggest challenge. And to solve this, Kubernetes is an open source solution which is being used by lot of the enterprise within the IT departments. So what is the best, the reason behind the orchestration is provisioning and deployment, configuration and scheduling, container availability, load balancing and traffic routing, scaling and removing containers, even the lifecycle management. Let you think about a fundamental scenario. Let you have a container solutions where your containers is getting died after 2 hours after the run. Then you have to rerun your container to make it up, right? So that's where the orchestrator will help. When your container is getting down, that time the orchestrator will rerun it, and it will make sure your application is highly available in that particular cluster. And that is the basic fundamental of Kubernetes architecture, and that's where it has lot of vast of information, and lot of enterprises struggling to find out the Kubernetes skill sets people. That's where public cloud is coming. Okay boss, what they are telling, we do not need to have the Kubernetes knowledge to realize the microservice architecture. To get it done, what the Microsoft people have implemented, they have implemented a solution known as Azure Container Apps, where you can implement a Kubernetes based architecture in public cloud in a serverless environment without having the Kubernetes knowledge. So Azure Container Apps provides a serverless hosting service that sits on top of AKS service, allowing you to deploy multiple containers without dealing with the underlying infrastructure. So you do not need to know what exactly going behind the scene to realize that Kubernetes architecture. That has been taken care by public cloud, Microsoft Azure. This service is intended to reduce the amount of knowledge and configuration needed to build an AKS application, potentially resulting a decrease in solution cost and faster time to market. As if you go ahead with Kubernetes architecture, you are manually installing Kubernetes, and you are doing the admin kind of activities, then the cost also can be impacted. But here somebody is already doing it for you, where it is managed service, where you do not have to think about how to optimize your cost. That is the power of Azure Container Apps. Now the next point, Azure Container Apps environment. It is nothing but a logical boundary within which you can host your multiple containers. That means it is one of the building blocks in Azure Container Apps. So when you are provisioning an environment, that means inside that environment, how many container apps that you are running, they will share the same environment, and that means they will also share the same virtual network and hardware which is getting provisioned by that particular environment. So it is a kind of basic building block, or a kind of base over which you can run your containers. Now let's try to discuss some benefits of Azure Container Apps. The first benefit, Azure Container Apps manages automatic horizontal scaling. That means if you want to scale out, that means you want to add more servers to cater the highest traffic, then in that case it will be taken care by Azure Container Apps. Second, allows you to application to securely store sensitive configuration values inside your application. Third, supports managed identity to access the Azure resources. That means from your containers app, you can natively interact with Azure services like SQL or other services with the help of Azure AD based authentication. That is the beautiful configuration known as managed identity. Third, it supports integration with log analytics. That means it is natively integrated with log analytics, which will pump your data or your logs to that particular Azure service log analytics. You can get your logs according to your query that you want to view or retrieve. Fifth, supporting multiple revisions in Azure Container Apps allows you to manage the versioning of your container apps. We are going to deep dive into this revision part in detail in the later on side. So basically you can deploy multiple versions of your containers when you are deploying in the container apps. Sixth, Azure Container Apps allows you to expose your container app to the public web by enabling ingress. So you will get the ingress capabilities where you do not have to think about a load balancer outside your container apps. Rather than you can leverage the ingress capabilities of the container apps to expose your API outside world. Seventh, Azure Container Apps allows you to bind one or more custom domains to a container apps. That means you can bind more than one custom domains to your container apps, and each domain has its own certificates, so that you can securely configure your domain join to your container apps. And the last one supports AD based authentication. As we have already discussed, it supports the managed identity concept. The same, it is natively integrated with AD related, Azure Active Directory related solutions. Now let's talk about Azure Container Apps with virtual network. As we are talking, like the container apps, it's a kind of publicly it's a managed service. So most of the private organization, they want to host this service inside their own private network. And when we are talking about private networks, then the virtual network integration is coming to picture. And when we are talking about virtual network, Azure Container Apps can be hosted inside your own custom virtual networks, where you can define your own NSGs, and based on the NSGs, your container apps will be hosted. So that is how there are two supporting methodologies that container apps follows. One is custom domain and another is custom network, and another is managed network. So in managed network, that time you can deploy your container apps in a managed network which has been taken care by Azure, and the custom network is more on your particular network where your Azure Container Apps can be hosted inside the NSG rules. Now the last word, Azure Container Apps revision. So this is the main crucial point. Let's focus here. So Container Apps revision is nothing but the implementation contains app versioning by creating revision. So each time you are creating a new version of the app, it will be treated as a new revision in Container Apps concept. A revision is an immutable snapshot of your container app version, with new revisions are automatically created when you make your revision scope change to your container apps. When you change it to scope change, revision scope, that time each time you are creating an application or you are deploying it, a new revision will be created automatically. You can run multiple revisions concurrently. So if you have an old revision and you are having a revision 1 and revision 2, you can run it concurrently inside your app environment. And at the end, you want to split your traffic to your old revision and the new revision. That is also possible with container apps. There are a lot of beautiful functionalities which is currently supported with container apps. So I would suggest, highly recommend, please go through the container apps document, and you'll find lot many information which will definitely reduce your headache of managing the Kubernetes architecture and all. You do not have to have the Kubernetes knowledge. That is the first beauty of container apps. You just use it based on your need and get the profit out of it. If you like my channel, then don't forget to subscribe our channel and share with your friends, and keep learning and keep sharing. Thank you.